Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Learn with Lana. I am so excited today that I have this awesome friend of mine. Her name is Holly Homer, and she is just an amazing at what she does. She is a blogger and she has been blogging for over 12 years. She has 18 different websites that she loves and that she's practiced with for many years. She is also the co-founder of a product that we both are so excited about and using called Pagewheel with Rachel Miller. And it's designed for coaches and course creators and bloggers and so much more that can be done with Pagewheel. Pagewheel is awesome. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to center on Holly's craft. Holly's craft is about blogging. Holly is like the professional of bloggers. And so, anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just have a little chat here with Holly about bloggers. Now, I'm an author, and as you pretty much well know, if you've watched any of my Learn with Lana episodes. And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Holly tell us about blogging from the aspect of being an author from how you could start a blog as a beginning at the beginning of being an author. Maybe you're an author and you would like to start a blog, but you don't know where to start. And I know I have several friends that are kind of interested in this, Holly. And so if you could just tell us a little bit about your background about blogging. And then after you do that, if you could just kind of share with us what platform you think a beginning blogger would like to start with.
I love that. And I know that I know that you have a community of authors and that you have a lot of friends that are authors. And a lot of times, you think, books and, you're like, you're making tangible things in the world. So you're like, blogger. I don't want to be a blogger. But one of the things I want to let you know is those two things, being an author and a blogger are actually really, really good together. Because one of the things that happens with books is that the people that read your books that want more and more and more, they have to wait and they don't get to interact with you online in a way that they can through your blog. So my first book, actually, I was approached by a publisher because I had a blog and they knew that I already had a community that would buy the book and stuff like that, and that led to several more books. And but like, so I came at it at an opposite way, is that I had a book deal because of my blog. But on the other hand, so many publishers these days with that book deal, one of the things is, oh, by the way, if you don't have a blog already, you need to go get one or you need to go make one. So it's not nearly as complicated. In fact, blogging's way easier than writing a book.
Oh, yeah.
Books are long and you can't, like, once they're published, you can't go back and edit it. Blogs are very free flowing and quick and easy, and there's no set what it has to look like. And I think that's one of the freedoms I love about blogging. But if you're just getting started, or if you're in a situation where, like, I need a blog, what I would totally recommend is starting on a free platform, because the world is full of things that you could spend money on. And there's no reason you shouldn't just start something today without, in fact, don't overthink this. Just go start a blog. I started on what is called Blogspot or Blogger, which is a Google product. It still exists today. You could go in 15 minutes, have your blog set up with one of those, with that free platform if you wanted to. There's also free versions of WordPress. And then there's new products out there since I started, like Medium and different things that you can actually just put your content on these platforms. And that way you can, like, first of all, eliminate the obstacle of money and tech and all that kind of stuff. You just basically go fill out a form and you have a blog. And the cool thing is once you start writing on a regular basis, you decide this is something that I want to do, I want to expand, or I don't have features that I want, or I want to customize this or that, then it's time, once you've been in there for a little while, that may be 6 months, and maybe a year, maybe a couple years, depending on where you are, is then it's really easy for someone who knows what they're doing. And I always hire out any of the tech on my blog, is to just move you on to what is the gold standard of blogging, which is self-hosted WordPress. And so what that does is you don't have to worry about any of those things when you get started. Just write. And then once you decide you want to spend a little bit of money, just have somebody who knows what they're doing convert it over. They can put everything in so that nobody even knows that it happened, except that it looks better or functions more the way you want it to be.
Oh, that's really cool. And I agree. I believe that sometimes first time bloggers really do like to choose the free portion until they get started. And then there's other people that just want to jump right in. And so it's great that there's awesome, there's an awesome opportunity for everybody to do what suits them the best. Now, when you very first started blogging years ago, how did you decide that you wanted to choose what niche you wanted to blog in? Like, I know there's some authors that I have friends with, and they might not know how to choose their niche for their blog.
Yeah, and I think this is something too that we generally overthink. And so I was blessed to not even know that this was a thing. So I started many, many years ago, when my kids were very, very small. I was a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 boys at that time. I probably had 1 or 2 boys, and babies and toddlers, and so I just started because, well, first of all, I started not even knowing what a blog is. I'd never read a blog. I didn't even know what it was. I mean, I just literally, someone told me to go to Blogspot and fill out the form, which is basically, if
Wow.
you go there, you'll see it's just a form. And and I didn't have any preconceived ideas of what this should look like. And back then there really wasn't like a standard of it anyway. And what I saw immediately was that I could share this. So I could put a picture that I took this morning of the kids eating breakfast, and I could let my mom know that this picture is, she could go look at it. And so for me, it replaced a very expensive scrapbooking habit that I was making multiple scrapbooks to send to relatives and stuff like that, and spending way too much money. And I was like, this is going to save me so much money. I'm going to start a blog. So for me, those early days were, I would, I kind of knew that I wanted to do this every day once I figured it out. So I was just posting a picture, and then like literally the first few months was like a blurb about the picture. I mean, like when I look back, I'd laugh so hard, because my background is in physical therapy. I was a physical therapist for many years. I never took a writing class. Like I'm not like I came at this a much different way than most people, which goes to prove that this doesn't have to look a certain way. So then once I realized that, like like I got a comment from somebody that wasn't my mom or my great aunt, and so I like clicked through and realized other people do this. But what was really cool about that is I started seeing how, like, this was pre-Facebook, pre-social media in any way, and how you could get to know someone through their writing. And like, so you started finding people who were, writing funny things or things that interested you, or like people that you had something in common with, and you go read their blog and then leave a comment and stuff like that. So it became a really like a social outlet for me. And then, like, personally, I started thinking, you know what? I want to make this something like I want to actually tell the stories of what happens every day in my home. And like, anybody who's been a stay-at-home mom of small children knows nothing happens at home. So, but then again, there's these little moments that you want to remember. So that was kind of what I was like, I want to like have a place to save these memories. And as that went forward, other people would read about these stories, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, it reminds me of, when I had kids, or like, oh, that, like, you realize you weren't alone, even though it felt very isolating, in that situation. And then psychologically, writing every day for me was amazing. Like, I needed this, because what would happen is all hell would break loose in my house. I have three boys. Like, all hell would break loose in my house. And instead of me reacting immediately and just getting in the middle of the drama, it actually, writing about it every day allowed me to kind of step back with some perspective in the situation and think, how am I going to write about this? Like, what's the silver lining here? How am I going to make this funny? Like, how can I tell this story in a way that, that makes it not just, nitty gritty drama
Yeah.
ickiness, but like something that, you can kind of look back and laugh. And so that's how my initial blog, June Cleaver Nirvana, just got started. And it wasn't because I, had any strategy at all, but I started attracting readers who I had something in common with, and generally they were moms or grandmas or, or the occasional stay-at-home dad, that just identified with kind of the Seinfeldian nothingness of what I was writing about every single day.
Yeah. Wow, that is pretty cool. And so anyway, this apparently gave you the opportunity to attract readers to your blog because, like you say, people were starting to read your blog and they weren't your mom or your aunt or your relative or anything. They were just, they were other people. So, how did you go beyond your mom and, your family just to attract other readers to your blog?
Yeah, I think that's like in the early days, it looked very different because there wasn't social media. And I think it's a lot easier to attract attention to content now because of the social media platforms. But like one of the things that I think, like, especially authors need to understand is like there's one of the freedoms of having a blog is that you have the ability to write things that might be a little bit outside of, the book. Whereas like, when you write out something like in a book or something like that, you're really constrained as to, oh, well, that doesn't fit in, or that distracts from the main story or stuff like that. Whereas life in general and our ability to connect with other people a lot of times is about the silly little details that wouldn't make it into the book. So the ability to like my life was like a hot mess express. you
So
know
like so like you're talking like the behind the scenes
the
type thing.
behind the scenes. And so that I think, and like, and I always say this when you're like thinking about what do you put out on social media, is like people do not connect really. I mean, I'm sure there's some, I mean, the Kardashians are probably the exception of people do not connect with a glossy exterior of someone else. People are people. So people love to be like finding those like little, silly things that happen, or the stupid things or the embarrassing moments that you can identify with and
Yeah.
say, oh my God, she's just like me, or she's just like my sister, or like, oh, I could totally see myself doing that. And
Yeah.
so that those like, and it was funny because while I was writing this hot mess express, there was a few websites online that were doing well, that this was where everybody was still buying magazines and newspapers and stuff like this, and this was the early days. And Martha Stewart was one of the big sites online that was actually making money and supporting, making money, in that realm. And like, I just remember back then thinking, oh my God, I would never want Martha Stewart to come to my house, because oh my gosh, like it would be so horrifying. And because like at that time she had such a glossy exterior, and like She was
Yeah.
making, wreaths that had $400 worth of supplies in it, and and like full dinner parties that like had no relevance to my life. And then she went to jail.
Oh, no.
And then everything changed for Martha Stewart in my mind. Like now she's like has the coolest like opportunities like going on, like talking to real people, because what we
Because
found out
she's
about
real.
her is she is a real person. And so while her early things were successful because of that glossy exterior, she is so much more successful today because she broke through that glossy exterior and actually made herself a person. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we have to like stop overthinking this public persona, because people do not want to connect with a public persona. They want to connect with like that person that they can't wait to go buy your next book because they know you. They know something about you. They identify with you in some way.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And so you also um said something one time when we were talking about how that you and Rachel Miller, you had a kids, your blog kind of grew, because your kids were growing older and you had to kind
Mhm.
of switch gears, and so you met Rachel, and so then you kind of started the kids activity blog so you could do kids activities, and it kind of changed your niche just a little bit towards um the activities for kids. So if someone started a blog out one way and then in the middle of it they seem to be merging into another kind of niche, they could actually move from, they don't have to be
One to the
stuck.
other.
They don't have to be
Mm-mm.
stuck.
Yeah, and I think this is what it's hard to think about this in when you think about like, traditional publishing and stuff like that, is like, like you can't change the plot in the middle of the book. But that's not how blogs are. And so what happened to me is, so I was telling these stories about my kids, and what I was reaching a wider audience, not necessarily even understanding that much at that time. And so until like I was in car line, one of my kids was in kindergarten. I think it was my oldest kid was in kindergarten or first grade, and one of the teachers stopped and came out to the car and commented on a story I had told on my blog. And I just realized, oh my gosh, like I'm to the point where these stories are not mine to tell. My children are
Yeah.
at the age where like, this could like I could see the future of like, oh, I can't you can't give this kid a job because, he like rebelled when he was 16 and his mom plastered it all over the internet. So I could see how that could be a problem.
Yeah.
And so I like I had a kind of a crisis of niche at this point, because I'm like I'm a stay-at-home mom. Like I got nothing else at this point. Like, like and if I can't tell these stories that include these children and I'm not doing anything outside of this, like I got a problem here. And so I met Rachel. I had started a Dallas bloggers group at that time. Many of us were blogging anonymously still at that point. And so it's fun to get together with other people that were kind of doing it. So I met Rachel through, because she lived about 20 minutes from where I lived. And I realized that she was doing something a little bit different. She was kind of following more of the Martha Stewart model, but in a doable way. So she was running a blog called Quirky Mama that was doing like simple play ideas, how to do it, simple games, simple crafts, all those kind of things, but not like big glossy fancy way, but like a way that a mom could do it or a teacher could do it. And she was doing some homeschooling too, so she was doing some educational stuff. And it turns out within a few months I ended up buying that blog from her, which is now Kids Activities Blog. I rebranded it at that time, and because I saw this as a way to keep within that same audience niche, but
Uh-huh.
release myself from like the stories I shouldn't be telling about my kids. and be able to write on a regular basis and support that same community, but in a different way. And so that's what I've been running. And Kids Activities blog to this day is what supports my family. And so it's a really, it turned out to be just, an act of God that we met. And I was able to, she needed to sell, I needed to buy, and it was what we needed to do. And so, yeah, how many 13, 14 years later, we're still doing things together, which is really exciting.
Yeah, especially like with the Pagewheel.
Mhm.
And so now if you were going to use a product like Pagewheel, or you were going to talk to an author about their blog and the content that they want to produce for their blog. I mean, like, would you recommend that they write articles, or that they do
Mhm.
interviews, or they do reviews for books? I mean, you do, for your kids' activities, you do your reach is for moms, and for stay-at-home moms, and for teachers, and for people who need that kind of content. But if you were like reaching out to an author, and what kind of content do you think that would work the
Mhm.
best for them?
So this is kind of this, in fact, I'm really passionate about this, in that I think I would start just writing whatever is the easiest for you. And because the, I mean, we all, this happens kind of like, it's kind of an obvious statement to people who write, but like there's certain things that just come pouring out of your heart that need to be, written in some way. Now, there's probably some things that you're like, oh, I don't necessarily want to put that out on the internet, but there might be a version of that or a portion of that that you do like feel comfortable sharing, because you get to decide how much you're sharing with your audience, which you're always in control of that. But so, for instance, for me, one of the things I was doing as a stay-at-home mom is I had designed and decorated a house, and so people had seen that, and so they had hired me to do some interior design and some projects within their homes and stuff like that. So here I was blogging about, like, so one of the things that I thought, oh, I'll do a design blog. And thankfully, I didn't spend any money on setting that up because I could not write that for beans. I literally, like, I remember like sitting in front of the computer for hours and hours and hours and just not having any way to like I could decorate a room and make it look amazing, but I was terrible at describing why I did any of it. And partially because I don't have formal training. I didn't have the language, I didn't have the lingo. It was a huge blockade. And so, like, and it made me realize at that point, like, I need to stick at the writing that just flows out of me. So because there's parts of you that, and then that will lead you to where you're supposed to be in another way. So just letting it, and like the pressure is really off at the beginning of this. When you start a blog, you have no readers. And that is a blessing. Like, because you're not going to be in the groove of what you want people to read for a while. And so, and I actually think that kind of organically grows together as you hit your stride and as you start really like honing in on what that looks like for you. So you might start you might start in a design blog and you're ending up talking about potty training 3 months later, because it was the swing that needed to happen. And then that, I think that is where people can really feel like, okay, this is from the heart, this isn't written by AI. This is something that means something to someone. Now, once you get that point of where you have that, like, this is what this looks like, there may be other like types of content. We think about this as like a gap analysis is what you might hear in like search engine optimization, which are super fancy words to say, hey, Google finds what you put out there. But what that means is at some point, like, let's say I run Kids Activities blog. And I write books about kids' activities and kids' crafts. So I want, like, when you like Google Holly Homer or you Google kids' activities, I want to be the person you find. So in order to do that, I might stand back and say, okay, in fact, I did this a while back. Is our second book was 101 science experiments, and then I realized we hadn't really written about science on the blog, even though I have a science background. It hadn't come up, and so one of the things we have a science book coming out. We need more science content so that because we need to be seen as science experts in the kids space. And so then we're like, okay, strategically, what are the science, if you're going to have, 25 science articles on a blog, what would they need to be to put yourself into that science expert status? So that's when you get a little bit more strategic. But at first, you're just going to go running full forward to see where that leads you and then fill in the gaps afterwards. And I know you're using a lot of the Pagewheel tools. And one of the things that we do have is AI assist for creation of content. So like blog posts and social media calendars and Facebook posts and Instagram posts and all these kind of things that it can be created based on just a prompt and put into templates and stuff like that. And so where does that come in when you're like talking from the heart? A lot of times it helps you with, I wouldn't suggest just letting it write your entire blog post and posting that. I just don't think that's a very authentic or even very like strategic way to go. But
Right.
it helps you not look at that, stare at that like that blank piece of paper.
Right.
Or it gives you like, oh, I didn't even think about including that. Like, oh, I have a whole story. Like, I love AI for like that spark that you're like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about. Like, I totally wouldn't have included that. And oh, I have a story, or oh, I have a point, or I have a tip that would be really good right there. So using these tools in a way that they don't take over what's happening, but they're just giving you the ability to fill in the gaps for what you might have forgotten to write.
Right. And then do you also recommend, I know that Pagewheel also offers the opportunity to not only help you with writing your copy and with your blogs and stuff, but it also has the opportunity to help you create a product. So, like, do you think like a blogger might would want to give away a free check sheet or free um kind of product as a freebie or opt-in on their blog? How would that work?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned this because one of the reasons why foundationally you'd want a blog, even if you're doing, even if you have a Facebook page, even if you have an Instagram account, even if you're on TikTok, and even if you're an author, is that it gives you kind of a home base on the internet that you control, so that you have that place that somebody can find you later. And one of the really powerful ways to do that is to also integrate email marketing into that. So building an email list. And one of the easiest ways to build an email list is to give away something that somebody who is in your niche or a potential reader or a reader would want. And you're like, hey, here's a free thing, and by the way, like, just give me your email address in exchange for that, and we'll stay in touch. And what's really powerful about that is a lot of my traffic for my blog comes from the daily emails that I send to the list of people that have visited the blog before and downloaded one of these free things. And so it gives its ability, because algorithms on all these social media networks get a lot of times will separate you from somebody you want to follow, so that like, oh, like you see something interesting and then it scrolls by and you never think about it again. Whereas if you had opted in and you got an email later from that person, and you're like, oh my gosh, I totally remember seeing this, like, oh yeah, I'm really interested in what she has to offer beyond that. So I love email lists. And then the second part of that is is being able to create something online that then allows you to take money or email addresses. You can set a price in Pagewheel if you want to, um, and also deliver it and then have all the social media follow up kind of laid out for you, all without any tech knowledge is really what Pagewheel is all about. Is it came about because I literally said to Rachel one day, like, why is it so hard to give away something? Because I had created something, but then we needed a landing page. And then we needed like basically a mini funnel that would then, get their information. And then we had to put zaps that went into the actual email client. And then, I mean, it like, and I'm terrible at all of that. And she was like, oh, well, it'll just take me about 8 hours to put this together. And oh, by the way, the software is $200 a month. And so I'm like, why? Why 8 hours and $200 a month for something I just want to give away, or maybe I want to sell for $5? I mean, how many, do the math on that? How many times do you have to sell a $5 product to even cover the cost of the software? So that's where like Pagewheel has been. So based on what you make, the sales page or the opt-in page is automatically created. The delivery page, so that you make sure that person gets that thing that they signed up for, or they bought, and then all the social media so that you can go out and easily say, oh, here's an idea that I can promote this today, so that you can just keep growing either your email list or your customer base or your readership, so that over time, you're not just losing these people into the algorithms, but you're able to reach out and touch them on a regular basis like they want you to.
Yeah, that is really great. Well, Holly, I really appreciate you sharing all this with us today about blogging and about Pagewheel, how we can use a tool to help, with our blogging. And I really appreciate you spending your time and coming helping me today with the learn with Lana actually. So, um how can people reach you? Can you I will in the comments section when I load the YouTube video, I'll put a link to your website.
Okay.
But how would you like to have people reach you if they wanted to talk to you some more about blogging or anything?
So Pagewheel is a great place to get started. And I met Lana through the community that is around Pagewheel. We have a really active Facebook group and education series. Learn.pagewheel.com is also some content around how to do all these things in a simple way where you don't have to have fancy knowledge or expensive tools and stuff like that. I also, if you have kids or grandkids, or you have a friend that does, send them over to Kids Activities blog. Just I will keep them busy and out of trouble. And then all things like coaching and consulting and stuff like that, I run off of hollyhomer.com. So thank you, Lana. This was so fun today.
Oh, you're so welcome, and I'm so glad you were able to come be a part of my Learn with Lana episode. And I will be putting links to uh I'll put a link to my Pagewheel affiliate
Yeah,
in our in the comments in the YouTube video, and so y'all can take a look at what Holly has talked about today. And if you need to get any more blogging tips or have any more information that you need, just check with us and I'll give you all the information you need for Learn with Lana. And thank you so much, Holly. I really appreciate it.
thank you.